perspective, just seeing these humongous states, and then of course states and territories, and then of course ACT is really small and it's tucked, of course, within New South Wales.
Was carved out of New South Wales so the federal government could have a territory of its own from which to govern. But they felt strongly about the federal government also having access to a seaport. So instead of making the ACT somewhere on the coast, they just annexed another small territory, the southern peninsula of Jervis Bay.
Yes.
Jervis Bay is a separate territory from the ACT, but when it comes to federal elections, the people of Jervis Bay vote in the electorate of Fenner, which is centred in the ACT.
Oh. Yes, this is one I always forget about, but I have heard or learned about multiple times. That yes, even over here, Jervis Bay is technically more with ACT than it is New South Wales.
And in terms of geographical quirks of electorates, spare a thought for the people of Norfolk Island, who vote in the ACT electorate of B, 1,900 kilometres away.
Jeez.
But that is
I had no idea Norfolk Island was that far. Whoa.
even the furthest removed local representation in the country. The electorate of Lingiari encompasses the red centre of Australia, the tropical top end of the Northern Territory, minus the urban areas of Darwin and some of Palmerston, and Christmas Island.
And Christmas Island is way up there. Wow, why did I forget that these are so far away? Christmas Island is way up there. Christmas Island looks like it's definitely closer to, I believe this is what, Indonesia? Closer to Indonesia than it is to Australia.
Which is 2,500 kilometres away. And there are some even more widely distributed pockets of Lingiari. Maybe it needs a video of its own. While we're on the topic of the outback, Australia is home to some really large pieces of land that are used for cattle stations. The largest is Anna Creek Station.
Now that I have
which
a
is the
video
largest cattle station in the world. It's over 23,000 square kilometres, which is a larger land area than 50 of the world's countries. And it's also true that the country of Brunei used to own a station in Australia that had a larger land area than Brunei itself, although it sold the station in 2018.
Oh, wow.
Back to the state borders now. And while Australian Aboriginal people have of course been living on the land with their own boundaries for tens of thousands of years, when white colonists tried to divide it up, the results were imperfect. Here's the border of Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia. Looks like it should be a pretty neat line, right? If we zoom in, we can see that the borders are actually a bit of a mess. Victoria juts out to the northwest. The river boundary moves from being along the southern bank to being in the middle of the river. The intersection of the three states is in the middle of the river.
Oh, wow.
So why isn't this just a nice line?
Yeah.
The 141st meridian was originally surveyed to be the eastern border of South Australia. However, it was incorrectly placed about 3.5 kilometres west of where it actually lies. When the mistake was discovered, New South Wales decided it was fair enough and established the accurate meridian as the border. Victoria kind of went, yeah, no, we like the border where it is, leaving us with this mess today. And Australia has another line that looks straight, but it's actually not. The borders of the Northern Territory, South Australia, and Western Australia.
Yeah.
This north-south line cutting across the entire
That's totally
continent
straight.
looks dead straight.
Yeah.
But if we zoom in, we can again see there's a tiny perturbation. This
Oh my
deviation is
God.
only 127 metres long, and was of course the result of another surveying error 100 years ago.
Yeah, there are a couple of these. I'll have to show some other time. There are a couple of these in the U.S. that most, like 98% of Americans don't even get or would know about. So yeah, that one is really funny. I would have totally thought it was a straight line. I always have thought it was a straight line, a nice clean border, but it has a little notch in it. Wow.
The border was intended to be approximately on the 129th meridian. So instead of measuring from one end of the continent to the other, 2 points were picked at either end that were pretty close to the meridian, and a north-south line was drawn from each point. Except, of course, the points were not exactly on the meridian, so the north-south lines didn't match up. Instead of fixing it, they just drew an east-west line to join the two north-south lines up.
Wow.
Could they have fixed it? For sure. But they had actually already agreed not to worry too much about little slip-ups like this. They'd agreed that an academic result was not to be sought after with a high and fanciful degree of accuracy. a century-old way of saying, she'll be right. And just a couple for my fellow Victorians who, like me, thought they had a good mental map of Australia in their head, but maybe I don't. Adelaide is north of Canberra, and Perth is north of Sydney. These realizations actually...
Okay, that I didn't know either. I've seen facts or, map, quirks like that in the U.S., especially those ones where you hear like, oh, so-and-so city is, more north of this city. And you're like, wait, what? Yeah, so like I know like a really funny one is, Los Angeles, which is, Southern California on the coast, right, is not as far west as like, what is it? Like Reno, Nevada, I think, or something. And you're like, what the hell? Like, how is somewhere in Nevada, like, further west than, Los Angeles? It's on the freaking ocean. But that's because, like, the U.S. goes at such a, let's see, I'm looking in my camera here. It goes at such an angle when it goes up, right? It keeps going more west. So you have, like, Idaho and Nevada are, like, really far west. Whereas California, at least parts of it, or Arizona or whatever, like, aren't as far west as you think compared to some of the northern parts. Or like Texas is so big, like El Paso, Texas, right, where we've literally lived around that area. El Paso, Texas is so far west that it's literally closer. That part of West Texas is closer to Los Angeles on the coast than it is to Houston, Texas, which is literally in Texas. Houston's on, of course, the Gulf of Mexico coast. So yeah, little factoids like that are interesting. And these Australian ones, I did not realize that Adelaide would have been north of Canberra. That is weird.
Perth is north of Sydney.
And Perth is north of Sydney. Again, in my head, I thought Sydney was like up here, maybe, and Perth was like down here. So it's just like how you think of things sometimes. It is not actually the correct, orientation.
These realizations actually blew my mind.
All right, and looking at a couple maps to end the video, I mean, look at this as the breakdown, like the timeline, right, of the map of Australia. Look at 1788. All you have is New South Wales. Even Tasmania is part of it. But then as you fast forward, I mean, look at 1825. It was just New South Wales and Western Australia with Tasmania actually colored in, so that must have been its own thing. I mean, they're still way huge, but good thing they kind of, divided them up a little more, right? Although Western Australia was pretty much untouched. That's what I find interesting. It's always been, Western Australia has always been this huge. Alrighty, and look at this map. This is the world life expectancy as of last year, 2022. Now, some interesting things. Look at the top 10, right? We have Japan at the highest, Singapore, Switzerland. Japan at the highest doesn't surprise me. I've always heard they have amazing life expectancy there. A lot of people are really healthy. They just live a long time. So that's not a big surprise, but it's still very impressive. And then, like Singapore, Switzerland, Italy, very impressive at 4th. And look at this, Australia coming up at 5th. With 83.3 years average. And then Spain, Canada, South Korea, Iceland, and Sweden rounding off the top 10. Now, that's very, very interesting. On the flip side, it is scary. Some of these countries I won't put on blast because they're the least expectant. That's not a list you want to be on. But some of them are really low. I mean, in this day and age, 54, 55, in your 50s, that is pretty scary that that is the average life expectancy. But if we zoom back out to the whole world map, one thing that stands out, like Canada for the Americas, the closest to me, no surprise, Canada is more, they have it going on with the life expectancy. Kind of really disappointed, if I'm being honest, in the U.S. I mean, look at us. We are the light blue. Looks like we're about this shade, so 75 to 77. Does that look right? I think we're that shade. So 75 to 77 years as a whole. That's not great, honestly. That's not great at all. I mean, geez, for a country that, is supposed to be really good at a lot of stuff, right? And of course, everyone knows how expensive healthcare is here. It's just like so annoying, right? It's so scary how expensive it is. And apparently it doesn't pay off as well because the average life expectancy is not impressive. We're nowhere near the highest here. We're nowhere near Australia, for example. And we all know how much the healthcare costs in Australia, how extremely little it is compared to how expensive it is here. Also, just the fact that